Welcome to the JBJ Management Podcast. I'm Willis Johnson, and today our guest is Stuart Vella. He is from Australia, and I'm always fascinated because I've never been there. Always fascinated. First of all, welcome.
Thank you, Willis.
A friend of mine was on a board in Australia, so he had 2 board meetings a month from Dallas. 18-hour flight. My God. You've done that flight, I assume.
Many times.
What do you do for 18 hours on a plane?
It depends if you're lucky enough to be let's jump straight in. If you're flying Emirates, well, you get a great, business class or a suite, and you can fly in comfort and luxury. If not, and you're sort of flying on maybe
these other airlines,
let's say a budget end, and you're back of the plane, then look, it can be a bit challenging for that length of time. But
18 hours.
I've been very lucky enough to be in the aviation industry for a little while, so we get a few perks of the trade, which is great.
Tell me about Australia. Just what is that like?
Incredible country, absolutely amazing country, amazing people. The environment is incredible. The food, it's clean. It's still very much untouched by a lot of say agricultural issues or biosecurity issues. So
yeah, I heard you got deadly poisonous snakes.
Yeah, that's what they keep them to keep everything bad out. So that way we keep it nice and balanced. So nothing wants to get in that's bad because we've got enough bad stuff there that wants to kill you. Even the kangaroos and koalas want to kill you. So,
Yeah, because you hear about, when you say Australia, it's one of the first things you think about, kangaroo.
Yep.
Do you see them?
Yes, they're everywhere. So they'd be like your deer.
Really?
Or armadillos. Armadillos here, everywhere.
Yeah, they are.
So it'd be like deer and armadillos. They're kangaroos everywhere. You have them literally in your backyard. Literally.
But you made the transition from Australia to America. What was that like? The culture, just the change in culture.
I found it actually quite easy. I was very, very lucky to have some incredible people around me to support me and mentor me within the industry and also personally, which made a huge difference. Culturally, Texas, Florida, those sort of areas are probably very, very similar from a personal culture where people are pretty easygoing, they're pretty friendly, they want to help people, they want to be engaged with people, they want to meet new people, and they've got the time to do it. Now, you can go up to places like New York or LA, they're very much like Sydney or Melbourne, where everyone's stressed, everyone's busy, and no one's got time for anyone. So I made the specific decision to come to Dallas, and absolutely do not regret it. It's fantastic. It's a great city. It's great people. It's a great culture. Great history.
Well, almost everybody that's on this podcast, I'll talk to them about Dallas-Fort Worth. It's the fastest growing area in America.
Yep.
Because you have been in other parts of America and you live in Australia, what is it about Dallas-Fort Worth that says, I got to get there? What is it?
Ease of lifestyle.
Oh.
So I think that's probably one of the big things. Like there's some obviously positives and negatives within Dallas-Fort Worth area, but overall from my lifestyle aspect, it's ease of lifestyle. So one, I can do whatever I want to do in Dallas. It's a very free, well, Texas, it's very free, as long as you're not hurting somebody else, you can basically do whatever you want. But Dallas, in particular, is very central. So from a work aspect and travel aspect, which is obviously what I'm focused on, I'm 2.5 hours to Canada, I'm 2.5 hours to Mexico, I'm 2.5 hours to East Coast, 2.5 hours to West Coast. So it puts me in a very, very unique situation where I can be day in, day out, East Coast, West Coast, where if you take the same example from New York, it's a 5 or 6 hour flight then to LA,
right?
Which then becomes a 2-day trip,
right?
Whereas I can do LA and back in 1 day. So
and having 2 airports,
correct? Yeah, Love Field is an incredible solution, and it's a solution for downtown. It's brilliant, with the Southwest connections across the country, and also obviously internationally is fantastic. So you have that connectivity in Dallas, which I don't think a lot of cities have, and it goes a step further where you have not only the connectivity from the aviation aspect, but it's how you get to the airports. If you want to try and drive to JFK in New York, it's a nightmare. If you want to get to New York, it's a nightmare. LaGuardia is a nightmare. You have so many issues and challenges around actually accessing the airports in some of these cities. LA is a classic example. That as much as the airport might be connective, getting to it to connect is a challenge. And that's where I think Dallas has done an incredible job at making sure that there's infrastructure. And I understand the public infrastructure or public transport infrastructure can be a challenge, but I think the private infrastructure to get to and from the airports plays just as big a role as the airports themselves and their connectivity into the rest of the country and internationally.
I think Maddie Parker and Mayor Johnson would love to talk more to you about that aspect, because that's something that they would sell to other cities that, oh, listen, it's just getting to the airport, because those are things that we don't think about. And it's something I want to address that you mentioned earlier, because you feel like you can do anything when you get to Texas, this culture. As African Americans, I don't know if that same feeling is there, that you feel you can do anything. I don't know if minority firms, specifically African American firms, feel they can do anything in Texas. So, how do we address that with you? You feel you can do anything. I'm not quite sure I feel the same way.
So it's interesting that you touched on that. So obviously when I arrived in the States 3.5 years ago, coming from Australia, which is an extremely diverse population, we have every single culture, everyone blended. Of course, there's going to be challenges with different groups and different cultural groups. However, I think overall the country is extremely integrated and happy to accept everyone. When I got here, maybe there were some challenges I saw that may have raised my eyebrows a little bit, but I think that I'm being very diplomatic there. I'm trying to be very diplomatic. But I also think that there's enough people out there that are focused on actually making sure that integration or development is taking place and in place. And I think that there's definitely an opportunity, and I've seen it with colleagues of mine in Dallas, which I work with, and business partners, where yes, there may have been some challenges, but I think some of those challenges are being overcome, and I think people do have the right mindset. And I think that's the first step, is making sure that all of our community leaders, all of our business leaders, me included, take that approach that, hey, we know that there may be a challenge here, but what steps can we take, whether it's a small step or a big step? As long as we have the right mentality and we go in with that right attitude, I do think there's opportunities to improve certain minority opportunities, but also looking at different places around the country. I think Dallas, to an extent, is actually doing better than some areas, and I really do believe that. I think that the acceptance and the development of communities and minority communities within what I've seen, especially in Dallas and South Dallas and around this area, there's some great opportunities and there's some great programs which are helping to really lift up those communities and support them.
In the business, the industry, the aviation industry, airport business that you're in, you're working on a particular program that is inclusive of that. You're trying to grow minority firms. Tell me why you chose that route.
Without sounding, I was very humbled when I got to the States to meet some incredible people here within the aviation industry. And I'm not going to mention their names, but they really did embrace me and bring me into the community and introduce me to different areas. Within that, I was lucky enough to be exposed to certain challenges which I saw, and they, as I said, raised an eyebrow. And at that point, I looked at with those people and those community leaders and said, well, how can we work around this? How can we not only develop a business relationship? Yes, of course, there's a business element to it, but how can we actually work with these communities to lift them up, literally? And that was where the program went to, which is Lift Up, Lift Off. And it's basically a program we've spent, I think, now about 2.5 years developing. We've got some incredible community leaders and stakeholders supporting us and going right up into the city, where we've looked at what are the opportunities within the aviation ecosystem, ranging from ground handling and logistics and freight, all the sorts of things that Donata, who I work for, do, through to the actual hospitality aspect, which is the lounges, the concessions, etc. And that's obviously my focus as director of airport hospitality for Americas. And then next step then goes into obviously the actual airline part and the actual aviation operations, the airports themselves. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, we saw that there was so many opportunities there, which many, many people never knew existed, because it's such an insular group. It's such an insular ecosystem. It's extremely difficult for people to break in unless they know about it. And again, going back to the leaders I was with and talking, we found an opportunity. We saw an opportunity. We said, hey, here's a really good fix where not only are we going to help the industry by bringing fresh people in, fresh blood, and all of those things, because every industry struggles for good people. Aviation's no different. Aviation in particular, because you've got security clearances, all those different things. So we saw an incredible opportunity there. And when people, I think, have got a vision, and it's a good vision, and it's for the right reasons, then you can achieve it. And we pulled together, the group of us, and we're at the pointy end of it now, where we want to be able to develop these communities into the aviation ecosystem.
Talk about the company Donata that you work for. What is Donata? Who is Donata? What does that mean?
So Donata is part of the Emirates Group. So Emirates Group has Emirates Airlines and Donata. Donata is our ground handling, logistics, catering, airport hospitality, all of the non-actual airplane flying aspect, if that makes sense. Of Emirates Group, correct. My role is specifically focused on airport hospitality. So I'm charged with overseeing all of Americas, but bringing airport hospitality. So lounges, whether it's a common use lounge or whether it's a meet and greet program, anything to do with actually how we service guests. And that's been my whole career. My whole career has been hospitality in one form or another, ranging from cruise ships through to obviously land-based through to aviation now. And we're very, very proud of our reputation as Emirates Group. We see ourselves as probably the best airline in the world. Our service is impeccable. Our way we look after our people is impeccable.
Is it true every seat's a first class seat?
Not quite. Every seat gets first class service. So we pride ourselves on our service. And that goes into our people, most importantly, because we can't deliver that program unless we invest into our people, and whether that's training, whether it's development, whether it's mentor programs, whether it's all of those things. We can't deliver what we need to deliver to our guests if our people aren't passionate about it. And then it goes into our communities, okay, is extremely important, because if we don't have the support of our communities, we're not going to be able to get the right people. We're not going to get that passion for our product and our service, okay? And it keeps going from there into obviously our safety, all of those elements, because we don't just do airport lounges or an airline. We do logistics, we do freight. I think we served 123 million meals last year across the globe with Donata Catering. So we have an incredibly large footprint. I think 120 airports across the world. I think it's 120. I have to check the facts, but yeah, we're a huge organization. But number one is our reputation and our service excellence. That is first and foremost, because if we can't deliver the product at the right standard, then we're not going to succeed.
Donald Trump, pregnant pause, said several years ago that the domestic airports in America are dumps. They're horrible. They're terrible. Donald Trump, based in New York, primarily flew out of LaGuardia. Now, I was at LaGuardia. I've flown into LaGuardia for 30 years. The last 4 years, that's a nice airport, especially Terminal B. Things have changed significantly. It reminds you now of de Gaulle in Paris, or the airport in Rome or Madrid. I'm just thinking about now, was his statement fair? Because when you look at the Detroit airport, you look at the Phoenix airport, look at LAX, he may have a point.
Yep. But I'd probably do a big shout out to our friends at Vantage Group, who obviously developed Terminal B in LaGuardia, and they have done an incredible job. Suzette and the team up there have done an absolutely amazing job from developing it from obviously concept through to delivery. And it would have to be, and I think it would actually won, best airport or best new airport in the world. It's an amazing airport.
In the world, no question.
It is extremely well connected. It's extremely functional. The technology in place works. It's not just technology to have technology. Passenger flows, your TSA, everything works. And that's how a domestic airport should be. Now, going to your comment that Donald Trump made.
Donald Trump that was his comment, not mine.
So there are a lot of domestic airports in the US which they have some significant challenges. 100%. Do I think that the industry and the airports in particular have realized that and are now working to overcome them? Yeah, 100%. I think that LAX is a classic example. They've done an amazing job now of renovating and building back through into Tibet. They're working now onto I think it's T5, which is the American Airlines one. So I think they've realized it and they're working through that. The new terminal in Newark is a great new terminal. Obviously,
Terminal C.
I think it's C where American flies into. Right. Again, great job.
But terrible airport. Other than Terminal C.
Correct. It's an extremely challenging airport. Correct. If it's not for that terminal. And then you can go into obviously areas, whether it's Orlando, which they've got a beautiful new Terminal C. And again, I don't think it's fair necessarily to criticize some of the old infrastructure, because we're seeing that they have to put the new infrastructure in place in order to then renovate and build that old infrastructure back out and correct it. So, but I think the overall, the comment would probably be fair to an extent. Where I think that it could be clarified is that I do believe the US domestic airports realize that they're behind and they are doing something about it. And that's something that's really exciting from an aviation industry aspect, because we're now seeing the US stepping back in as a country to show what we can do with airports, what tech we can bring, and where you've got amazing airports in Australia, or as you said, Madrid, Rome, etc. I think what we're going to see as the US brings and develops its airports and redevelops the airports, I think then it's going to put the rest of the world to shame. And I'm very, very proud to be here in the States. So maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I think that the opportunities that the US has to show the rest of the world as a showcase how we can redevelop airports and how we can develop that industry, I think is very, very exciting. And I think that if anyone can do it, the US can do it.
2 questions as we close. What would you say to a minority business firm that's maybe tinkering in the concessions arena? What would you say to that firm about getting into the aviation industry? And then what would you say to a high school junior in terms of preparation to get into the aviation industry?
So for a firm which is already a concession and looking at getting into the airports, I would say yes, definitely pursue it. My only caution, or not even a caution, simple advice would be to make sure you do your homework on how and what you're going to deliver that concession product. Is it the right product for the airport? But it's also how you enter the airport. And without going into the details of the ACDB program, which is the Airport Concessions Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, it's an incredible program. I absolutely support the program. However, with any program and in any aspect, there can be areas where it could be misguided or misused. And I think that's where it comes back to the onus of the concessionaires or the minority groups coming in to make sure that they are actually very clear on what's acceptable, what's appropriate, and that they stick to it. And there's a lot of firms out there which can help and support them, which are good people and good firms. I would say that the most important thing would be to get with AMAC, which is the Minority Council, and find a mentor, find a partner within there which you can be mentored by, and they can show you the pitfalls and they can show you the wins and the losses. That would be my advice: is to get involved with AMAC, get involved with your local airport, get involved with the board, and find a mentor to help you through. Second question in regards to kids coming through, I would say absolutely 100%. Get your ACDB certification, get a business background or degree behind you. Lift Up, Lift Off, which will be through Paul Quinn College here in Dallas, is the perfect spot. You can have a bachelor or a certificate. It's going to give them the business acumen and the understanding of not only the aviation industry, but also business, to then be able to enter into the ecosystem and understand how it works, why it works, what they need to understand from a business point to deliver a successful business as an entrepreneur. Also, which area of the airport do they want to go into? Because it's not just food and beverage concessions. There's IT, there's retail. There's so many different areas within the ACDB program which is available. And that's where we want to make sure we're letting everybody know what's available and bring these kids out of school or college or university and give them the resources, give them the understanding, and give them the credibility to come into an ecosystem, an airport ecosystem, with the understanding and support where they are confident enough to step in as an entrepreneur, set their own business up, and most importantly, that they're going to be successful at running that business and they're not simply going to get steamrolled. And that's, you know, the passion that I've got for that, and passion that our stakeholders have in that program is why it is so important to see that next generation start to come through. And I think that's our job now in our stages of our career, is to make sure that we're starting to groom that next generation to keep the airports going. Stuart
Vella. He's our guest today on the JBJ Management Podcast. Stuart, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Willis. I greatly appreciate the offer.
You bet. We'll see you next time.